Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Alan, and this is Stuart, and we'll get into some formal introductions in a second. Today we're going to talk about online learning behaviour and why it might be the secret to identifying some of the superstars in your organisation. So to introduce myself, my name's Alan Hiddleston. I'm the Account Director for Corporate Learning at D2L. Quickly, what D2L does, we work with some of the largest companies in the world to help them provide a more engaging learning experience for their learners. We provide a next generation learning platform, so for anyone that's sitting thinking, what is that? There's three things that we do that are different from a traditional LMS. The first thing is that the system's very easy. So it's very easy for the learner. It's a rich, engaging experience that you can access across any device. It's much more like the technology you'd use outside of work rather than the technology you get forced to use inside of work. The second thing we do is it's very, very flexible. So we can help large organizations to be very agile because anyone in the organization can author a course on the platform. So if you're a subject matter expert, you can build a course really easy on our platform and deliver learning. And the last thing is it's very smart. So it uses data in a way that other platforms don't. So most learning management systems look at who's completed what and who's not. But if you really want to improve the learner experience, you need to go deeper than that and really understand how learning's happened. So D2L can help you see that yourself, and it can also adapt the learning experience for the user so that they get a more personalized experience that's relevant to them. Lastly, we're not just a technology vendor. We do have the skills and the expertise about online learning, and we do partner with our customers to help them actually deliver these types of next generation learning projects. And with that in mind, I'm going to hand it over to Stuart, who actually is one of those customers that we partner with, and let him talk. There you go.
Thanks, Alan. Introductions, my name's Stuart Pedley-Smith. I'm probably one of the few people here today who is not trying to sell you anything. I'm here to tell you a story. D2L are our partners, so we've been working with them for some time, and my short presentation is about explaining how some of the things that we've learned with the LMS and with gamification has led us to some interesting discoveries that I'd be wrong to say if I said we bottomed out and we knew exactly where it was going to end. But I'll let you be the judges of the process as to whether it's interesting. Now, as I said, my name's Stuart Pedley-Smith. I work for a company called Kaplan, and I've put this up here not just to sort of promote it, but if there is anybody out there who's interested in changing careers and would like to become a qualified accountant, then please see me after the show. Kaplan in the UK, this is the bit that I represent, we effectively train people to become qualified accountants. Now, a reason I say that is because it's relevant to the story, and you need to sort of factor that in with the process that I'm going to go through. And what that in essence means is that we train students for high stakes qualifications. So these are postgraduate, 23, probably 25 is probably the average age. Large amounts of our clients will be PwC, Deloitte, EY, all the big accounting firms, but many large firms. So for people within your firms, unless you are accountants, we probably train them. When I say train them, we train them towards the professional examinations. So that's, and I think that's important to position, because I'm going to talk to you about learning, and it's learning in a very close definition of exam passing. Okay, now you can kind of disagree with that, but it's kind of relevant to the story. Now, my first observation is that exams are quite important. And the reason I say that is because, once again, in our world, these are people that have had an education, they've had a higher and further education, and now they are doing a professional education. If they don't pass their exams, they can lose their jobs, okay? Now, there's two sort of quotes here that are sort of contradictory. And this is one of the things that we're finding within our industry, in the professional services industries at the moment, that it's becoming increasingly difficult to find candidates who 10, 20 years ago would have just come out of the top drawer. They'd have said, our policy is to recruit the very best students from the very best universities, and then what we do is we give them lots of sort of difficult things to do. They get some training, and then they go on to qualify, and then they learn a huge amount on the job. So these two are deliberately contradictory in the sense that this is very important to people. You know, I apologise slightly, I'm a qualified accountant. You know, passing those exams fundamentally changed my career. So these are important things for people to pass. Now, the problem to a certain extent is that students are coming out and everybody's got a degree, and well, there's a number of different problems. One is that students are coming out with degrees and they're looking very similar. The second thing is it's very difficult for employers to know exactly what they want. So years ago, once again, it was very easy, particularly in our world, in my world, it was about compliance, it was about rules, it was about adhering to the rules. Now it's all about value add, it's all about creativity, it's about problem solving. The other thing that we've got is that, you know, I still stand up here in front of you and say I'm a qualified accountant, but I qualified 30 years ago. I still hold that up as a badge, as if some way that gives me some credibility to talk in front of you as being somebody who has some knowledge. The speed in which these qualifications are changing is becoming ever and ever challenging. And I put that really as a question there, is that potentially this is not so much now about knowledge, and I can't play down knowledge. You know, I lecture, I teach financial management, I teach content once a week these days, not so much as I used to do. So I still deliver content and people need to know what it is. But that's not necessarily, I think, where we're meant to be going with this in the longer run. Now, that's the bit on exams. The second bit I want to talk about is what we've done with the LMS, and the third bit is the findings. You won't see anything very technical here because I'm not a technical person. And what we did with it really, there was, well, a number of reasons why we decided that we'd sort of go down a particular route. And historically we've been a classroom delivering company. But these three things came together to sort of create what's effectively a perfect storm. Firstly, we're an evidence-based educator, so we follow learning science principles, we have an instructional design team, we've got learning scientists in the US, so it fits very nicely with this analytical process. So we want evidence in order to make decisions about learning. Secondly, by engaging with D2L and getting information out of our LMS, we got more data than we ever had before, because I can't tell very much from you at the moment. We do a little bit of body reading and body language stuff, so I can pick up a few cues, but I can't translate that into anything tangible. The minute that somebody logs onto a course, however, we start to get lots of data. This wouldn't work if, effectively, the students weren't moving more online. Now, we still offer both a classroom and an online delivery. However, we are experiencing more and more students online. The minute that they go online, the minute that we get the data. So this has been, you know, a really interesting thing for us. It's been the ability for the very first time to turn thoughts, ideas, and opinions into some form of measurable information. Now, what did we do with it? This is what we did with it. We created a gamification platform. And the gamification platform, once again, you've got to figure this out in the sense of, I'm going to ask you the next one of these in a minute. You've got to figure this out in the context of what we're trying to do. We're trying to create behaviours that will help people pass exams. That's what we're trying to do. So we created a league table, and we created a badging system, and we put the two together and effectively said, as you work your way through a number of learning behaviours, we will give you points. Now, we have always measured to death exam performance. We've always pulled the data off, what tests you pass, what score you get, what your final mark is, which bits you did. We've always drilled into that, but we'd never done anything like this before. Now, these are the badges that we created, and I can only say, if you were in finance, you would think this would be hilarious. If you're not, you're just going to go, that's interesting. So these were awarded to students who did particularly well at some of the functions. So if they did well at tax, they were top of the tax. Now these were what we would call performance-driven badges. So they were rewarding the academically successful, the ones that did well. But the table is running off what we called progress. And what we were doing, we used points, badges, and leaderboards, and prizes to a certain extent at the end, in order, the leaderboard was important, because you can see, we've got about 15 offices throughout the UK, so we used the class average to create some form of a team spirit, so that they would encourage the other students to actually partake in these exercises. Now, these are the things that we measured. We measured the progress, not the performance. The exam performance we already kept. We already did league tables. And look, not everybody likes league tables. It's great when you're at the top. It's not very nice when you're at the bottom. So we gave points for these activities. Points simply for attempting a test. Points for attempting subsequent tests. Completing on time. And this was a really, really interesting one. Each subsequent attempt leads to an improved score. So if the candidate went back and thought, I'm not happy with that, went back and had another go and got an improved score, we were able to measure it. And then we gave points for completing all the learning objects on time. Now it was only, and this is why this is a conversation of discovery, it was only when we got to the end of this that what we perhaps realized was we can spot people who have other qualities than exam success. For example, are they diligent? Is this just measuring people that are working hard? Somebody who's very clever probably doesn't complete all of them and still does well in the exam. But were we getting to see some types of learning behaviours that we could measure? Did it work? Yeah, this is the data that we pulled off from it. So what you can see the fail, those are the little orange ones, and the passes are the blue ones, and the score across the bottom is the gamification score. So what that suggests is that those with the higher progress also had the higher performance. So we were happy in our objective. That's why I stressed at the start what we do. We are trying to get students through exams, so it's a very easy to measure target. So it puts us as a sort of an experiment, really. We aren't trying to measure whether they are engaged, particularly in the learning process. We're not trying to measure whether they're engaging with other students, particularly. We are just measuring their final exam performance against their performance, ultimately, in the real exam. Now, the last part of this is where I think this might go, and this is the bit that we're working on just now, and this is the bit that I think is really interesting. We're working on these three, really, and it's this idea, can we, by measuring the way that students behave online, effectively, can we spot an underlying score? Can we identify potentially those that are just hard workers? All right, and you know, this is the classic grit, this is the classic, the Angela Duckworth stuff, this is the classic Carol Dweck stuff. This is the stuff that's sort of saying, maybe by measuring what we've got up here, determination, desire, is better, a better attribute to be looking at instead, or in my world, it's probably always going to be as well as. It's always, I can't see people employing people who are not qualified accountants, but if we've got a group of people, maybe we're going to go for the ones that have desire, determination, motivation. The fact that they tried it and failed, okay, and this is all the grit stuff. If you've not read it, it's a really interesting book, based on, the research by Carol Dweck, which is the fixed and growth mindset. So if you haven't read those, so for me, this is the combination of the idea that we're taking data, we're taking an LMS, which is knocking out the data, and we're bringing it together in an exam high-stakes world, and we're now combining it with looking at the motivations behind the people, instead of just looking at the results. For the first time, I think we're getting to see or identify a group of people that might be slightly different. It might just be a differentiator. And look, just to sort of tidy my section off on this, this idea of brain plasticity and the sort of things that you reward and how people's behaviours can be adapted, instead of just rewarding the students at the top of the academic league table, by bringing, that we class as performance, by bringing in progress, i.e. have they got diligence, are they determined? And here's the final thought on all this, because ultimately the world that they're going to face isn't the world that I faced. When I trained as an accountant, it was pretty set how the career path would work and the job would stay. Now, it's all about working in a world of uncertainty, and it's just possible that that is more important, and through the gamification and the data that we're pulling out, maybe that's going to give us some sort of insight into what makes superstars. Thank you.
All right. Thanks very much, Stuart. So just following on from that, I wanted to look at a couple of other examples of actually using data and how we can do something with that in the Brightspace platform. So if we're actually starting to look inside the learning platform, most kind of learning management systems will show you reports of who's completed what and who hasn't, but if you really want to sort of look beyond that and look at learning behaviour, then you need to start to look at other things, like you need to look at the visits that people have made, the attempts, the number of them. You need to look at the upward and the downward trends of who's been successful, who's getting good scores on things the first time, who's not, and you've got differences over there, and you can start to spot trends in that, and you can maybe start to support people. And you know, this is predominantly more useful for larger, kind of longer term programs. The other thing that we can do, once not just humans can look inside that, but also through machine learning, we can actually start to use predictive analytics to predict what the outcome of it is based on the learning behaviours that people have. So our platform is actually looking at a whole group of learners that are going through this program, and we can start to map out from the bottom left up to the top right who the top achievers are going to be based on their performance as they progress through the program and the learned data that we have from historical performance. The other thing we can start to do is, as Stuart said, you can start to measure things that we could never measure before, and we can actually start to measure behaviours that we didn't actually know in the past were useful because we couldn't get the data. For example, social learning. So we know, or we think we know, that social learning is a good thing, and people collaborating and working together in teams is good, and we want to encourage it. But what this chart here does is, we call it a sociogram, and it maps out like who the best social learners are. So if you look at the big green spots, they're sort of large and they're connected to a lot of different people, so they're very connected learners, so they're maybe contributing a lot in discussion threads, they're maybe sharing a lot of content, and they're networked with these other people that are in the group. So what we can do with this that's actually practical is we can see, well, Ethan is out here on his own. You can see over there that he's actually doing the learning, but he's not being very collaborative and he's not participating in a lot of the things that we know are actually good behaviour. So what you could do with Ethan is you could say, Ethan, actually we want you to work with Stuart. He's right here, he's a big green blob. Sorry, Stuart. He's a big green blob and he's very social and he's very collaborative, so you might benefit from that, and we can try and improve the experience.
Alan, can I just one thought on that, because we've run the presentation, we've had a quick talk about it, but this was something that I got terribly excited about, because at the moment all we're measuring is the way the student moves through a series of, if you like, gateways, and then what we're saying is we can pull their behaviours and form opinions about their character. We don't get a lot of collaboration, okay, because people are very focused on the exam, but if we could monitor students' engagements on platforms, and look, the exam world is changing for us. There are a lot of case studies these days that require a lot more high-level skills to be assessed. So if we could monitor that, we can put a point on that and effectively link it back in to say, guess what, guys? You know, your top most highly academic student, they're also your most social, motivated student. And when you put those two together, in my world, you're getting fee earners, partners, people that can communicate with clients, which is ultimately what some of our customers and clients are looking for. Sorry, Alan.
Absolutely, no, thanks for that. And the last thing is, we can start to gamify behaviours. So I know Stuart talked about that earlier, and we talked about attempts and things, but even at a more basic level, things we see are very successful is We know discussion participation's good, so let's go after that. Let's give people badges for actually participating in things, for helping people, for sharing things, and gamifying some of the small behaviours. So it feeds that kind of social learning behaviour that we want to encourage. So in summary, a couple of closing thoughts. It's getting more and more difficult to identify the talent and so spot the kind of superstars in the organisation. It's not just the world's changing so fast and we're in a sort of constant change culture, so academic success is no longer really going to make the best employee for every role. The LMS can help to highlight successful learning behaviours, and if you've got the ability to look beyond just completion stuff and look really into the data, then you can really start to identify and understand more about some of the people that work in the organisation and their skills and attributes. Once you start to understand that and you start to see what the behaviours are that are really useful, they can be reinforced and rewarded. Now, we talked about gamification, that's one way to do it, but there's other types of coaching and mentoring and tools that you can use as well. And actually, as Stuart kind of talked about grit, diligence, determination and desire to do things, it may even be more important now than academic success given the sort of highly volatile changing times that we're in. And lastly, technologies are continuing to develop, right? And there's no real limit on this now. The technology's there, machine learning's there, there's vast lakes of data, and it's really only limited by people's sort of idea and their ambition about what could be achieved with that. And hopefully that data can be used in practical ways to improve learning for people. So thank you very much. Happily take any questions. So we'll be over on stand over there, L12, where learning happens. If you want to come speak to me or Stuart about the presentation as well.
Change of career.
Okay, and you can also connect with us online. I'm online, email address, and on Twitter. And Stuart has a good blog as well, pedleysmith.uk, if you want to go and read that, check out. So thanks very much.
Thank you.